So this was Prime Minister Narendra Modi there making his way to the 10 Downing Street. This, remember, is the official residence of the British Prime Minister. And he's been welcomed. It is a red carpet that's been rolled out for Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This, of course, is his second visit to Britain. The last time Prime Minister Modi visited Britain, the man in charge of that country had been David Cameron, and that was before the Brexit vote had taken place. So it's a completely different nation that he's now visiting. It is a nation that finds itself a little more isolated away from the continent. It has broken off from being a part of the European Union, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, being the astute strategist and politician that he is, also senses an opportunity in terms of the requirements of Britain. And it will be interesting to see as to how this will, of course, redefine the relationship that India has with Britain. Last time round when he was in Britain, David Cameron and Prime Minister Modi had in fact described India-British relationship as a vibrant partnership. Now, we've not seen any big terminology used so far to describe as to how and what this visit will, of course, symbolize. But this is a visit that is high on optics. This is a visit that is high on symbolism. And this is also a visit which in many ways will lay down the broad guidelines on basis of which India and Britain will, of course, engage in the coming future. All right, so that was Prime Minister Narendra Modi there being welcomed by some of his supporters even in London. Remember, he's always received this rapturous welcome every time that he's travelled abroad, and this occasion is no different, where Prime Minister Narendra Modi there was completely surrounded with some of his supporters. And now these are the visuals from a little while back, where he has been welcomed by the British Prime Minister Theresa May at the 10 Downing Street. The two leaders will meet over breakfast. Now, it's a busy day which Prime Minister Narendra Modi has. He's, of course, in London to attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And this will have both bilateral as well as multilateral engagements with different heads of the states attending the meeting. You'll also have a top-level meeting with Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May, as well as meeting with Queen Elizabeth at the Buckingham Palace. The Britain's Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, who received Prime Minister Narendra Modi at London's Heathrow Airport yesterday night, had said that he was extremely excited about the growing India-UK bilateral trade. He also went on to state that this visit by Prime Minister Narendra Modi will help build on the huge economic advantages that will be made available to everyone. Now, to quote Boris Johnson, this is what he had said: "Thanks to our shared history, we are a living bridge. We have a living bridge between us, and now we want to build on the incredible tech sector where both India and the United Kingdom are making giant strides together." So Prime Minister's first official engagement begins with a bilateral meeting with British Prime Minister Theresa May at 10 Downing Street. The two leaders are expected to discuss a wide range of issues of mutual interest, which would include cross-border terrorism, visas and immigration as well. Now, this is a memorandum of understanding on the return of illegal immigrants, which had expired in 2014, will also be officially renewed to take into account the biometric and other developments in the field. And this is a historic and in many ways a significant visit of the Indian Prime Minister to Britain, which is high on optics, which is high on symbolism. There isn't exactly many trade deals or defense deals that we are looking at, but the first official engagement of the Indian Prime Minister with the British Prime Minister has begun. They'll be meeting over breakfast. And also remember, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is, of course, in Britain to attend the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And our London Bureau Chief, Mandy Clark, is still with us. Mandy, this is an important visit. He is going to have bilateral meetings as well. But the key focus is, of course, the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which is to begin today. Talk to us a bit about as to how India's profile within the Commonwealth has in fact grown in the last few years.
Well, yeah, certainly, India is one of the major players in the Commonwealth Heads of Government. They're going to be talking a lot of what trade deals. They have their own forum where they want to talk about the environment. They want to talk business. And certainly that's going to be the main focus that Britain wants to focus on, how to really leverage the Commonwealth heads of government, how the Commonwealth can work much closely together so they have a better trade deal within themselves. When Prince Harry opened the summit, he said what we want to focus on is not the wealth, but our commonness. What ties us together? It's much more than language. It's a part of culture. So certainly Britain's really trying to leverage this to get people closer, people working together and get them more coordinated. That's certainly the focus. But there is many heads of government, but certainly it seems that Narendra Modi is getting the red carpet treatment. Very few are meeting the Queen. He's going to have time with Prince Charles. He's going to have a number of bilaterals. He's meeting Theresa May twice today. Right now, they're having a breakfast meeting. Later on today, they will have another meeting. So really deepening that relationship between India and Britain is a key focus on top of the Commonwealth heads of nations.
Absolutely indeed. And if I could just quote what Boris Johnson said in the immediate aftermath after welcoming Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday, he said, thanks to our shared history, we have a living bridge between us, and now we want to build on the incredible tech sector where both India and the United Kingdom are in fact making giant strides. Now this is what Boris Johnson had said yesterday evening, immediately after he met. Now these are live visuals that we are getting of the Indian Prime Minister and the British Prime Minister there, seated together at 10 Downing Street, exchanging certain pleasantries. So these are live visuals that we have of the Indian Prime Minister with his British counterpart. This of course, is a meeting which will be looked at very, very closely, because in many ways, India's relationship with Britain post-Brexit will of course change. And Mandy, if I could bring you in on this, I was just quoting what Boris Johnson had said yesterday. The tech sector will be one of the key principal sectors for greater cooperation between India and Britain.
Well, certainly that would be a key focus. India is seen globally, not just here in Britain, as a tech leader. So there's a lot that Britain can learn from India. They want to deepen those relationships. Of course, you have to see it in the broad backdrop of where Britain is now. We're heading post-Brexit. In a year's time, Britain will, in all intents and purposes, be more or less out of the European Union. They want to really deepen those ties, and they're looking at their historical links to really tighten those relationships, deepen them. And the tech sector is certainly India's leading sector. And so that's not surprisingly a focus of the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, looking at ways that this relationship can get even stronger.
Right, absolutely. And one of some of the other key issues which are likely to be discussed are cross-border terrorism, visas and immigration. Now, considering the fact that immigration was such a huge issue in the course of the Brexit vote, how do you think that will play out between India and Britain?
Well, India has rightly pointed out that China has easier access to get into Britain than a lot of Indian nationals. And it's an issue, certainly, that India has brought up in the past. Right now, India has far more leverage than it did before. So in all likelihood, we'll likely see an easing of visa restrictions into Britain for Indian nationals to allow them to study, to spend more time in Britain. So that is in all likelihood going to see there. When it comes to the immigration as a Brexit issue, it was really the number, the volume of EU migrants that was their main concern. So that's unlikely to feature in these talks.
And any proposal perhaps to make visas easier for Indians to perhaps migrate to Britain for work? Anything expected on those lines?
There's hope certainly on the Indian side that we will see that. We've got indications from the British government that it's something they're actively considering. We won't know until the ink is dried, but in all likelihood, we can hopefully expect that.
All right, and also he is expected to have a private audience with Queen Elizabeth II at the Buckingham Palace. Now, the Queen had in fact personally invited Prime Minister Narendra Modi by writing to him ahead of the Commonwealth Summit. Talk to us a bit more about, what this entire meeting would be like and the protocol involved in it.
Unfortunately, I won't have the opportunity to be there, but certainly it's going to be very ceremonial. Very few heads of state actually get a state visit, the honor of going to Buckingham Palace. In all likelihood, he'll probably take tea with the Queen. They will discuss issues. She avoids dealing with issues of trade, but they'll focus on their deepening relationship. She is a big fan of India, that's not surprising, and of Narendra Modi. So there will be certainly a lot of conversations, but not on the political level.
Absolutely, indeed. And also, Mandy, if I could just come back to one of the questions which I had asked you earlier. Now, you've covered the visits of several heads of states to Britain, but is this somehow different in terms of the kind of reception that he's got from the members of the Indian diaspora there? Has any other world leader been welcomed so warmly by members of that nation in England?
Without a doubt, this is completely unusual to see the diaspora so energetic and enthusiastic. Modi is an unusual leader to begin with because he is quite charismatic, but he certainly seems to really engage with the diaspora on a very personal level, and they really enjoy it. We're seeing people gathering here in Downing Street early morning to dance for him. He's going to do an event where he's answering questions from the public, and the more he engages with the diaspora, the more they love him. So we haven't seen anything on this scale with other world leaders and the way they engage with their diaspora.
Absolutely, indeed, Manny Clark. Do continue to stay on with us. Meanwhile, I'm told that we'll be joined in by our international affairs correspondent, Ramesh Ramachandran, as well in just a bit of time. But these are visuals that we have got from just a little while back by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the British Prime Minister Theresa May at 10 Downing Street. Now, this is set to be a breakfast meeting that the two leaders will have. This is the first official engagement as Prime Minister Modi kickstarts his very busy schedule for the day. Now, Ramesh Ramachandran is with us. Ramesh, good afternoon to you. This is a visit that is high on symbolism and also in many ways will determine as to how India and Britain engage with each other post-Brexit.
Indeed, Mohammed. Now, while the two leaders, Theresa May of Britain and Prime Minister Modi of India, will be reviewing the entire gamut of bilateral ties in the political, economic and strategic areas, but they will also have an eye on the post-Brexit scenario, for which India will be a crucial player as far as free trade area grows, trade ties are concerned for the UK. So clearly, Prime Minister Theresa May will have a keen eye on the post-Brexit scenario come 2019 to 2020, when Britain will pull out of the EU, and thereby India will try to have a better say or better leverage over Britain as far as trade goes.
Indeed, and also from some of the indications, early reports that have come in, Ramesh, India and United Kingdom are expected to sign nearly about a dozen agreements across different sectors. Any big agreement that is likely to be signed between them?
Well, from UK's perspective, Mohammed, Prime Minister Theresa May has made it abundantly clear that they would want to sign a bilateral deal to stem the scourge of illegal immigration, so to speak, as far as London is concerned. And that's one item high on the British agenda. It remains to be seen whether they end up agreeing to sign that agreement or not. But on the face of it, on the table will be the entire gamut of bilateral, regional, global issues, including on the issue of immigration, trade, investments, people-to-people ties, education for that matter, and easier visas or consular issues for people traveling to and from India.
Absolutely, indeed. Immigration, of course, will, be a big sticking point. And Mandy, if I can bring you in on this, post-Brexit, the manner in which Britain perhaps perceives India has changed because, having moved away from the European Union, Britain, of course, needs, other allies that it can actually rely and bank upon. So how do you see this relationship? Will this be, a relationship that it perhaps define as to how India interacts with countries in Europe? Will Britain want to be the #1 nation that India, in fact, interacts with?
Certainly, Britain is very much hoping that India will become one of its biggest trading partners. The relationship has completely changed after Brexit in many ways for positive between India and Britain, because Britain really needs India much more than India possibly needs Britain. So we're going to see certainly a wooing of the Prime Minister to really encourage and deepen those ties. Certainly, as Boris Johnson pointed out, in the trade tech sector, they want to do more on that. It's certainly noisy here. There's lots of people here to greet the Prime Minister and celebrate his arrival. So there's certainly a lot of people excited about his visit.
Absolutely, indeed. I mean, we can listen to the slogans that are being raised by the members of the Indian diaspora who are there to welcome the Indian Prime Minister as he's presently at 10 Downing Street. And Ramesh, if I could come to you on this, you know, there are going to be 52 other heads of state of the Commonwealth countries who are also being hosted by Britain. But in many ways, the focus will, of course, be on the India-British bilateral, considering the significance in terms of trade and other ties post the Brexit scenario. Is Britain, in fact, looking out to try and revive Commonwealth post the Brexit scenario?
Indeed, Mohammed, as you correctly mentioned, there are two components for Prime Minister Modi's ongoing visit to UK. One is the multilateral summit, that's the CHOGM or the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. The other is a bilateral component of the visit where Prime Minister May and Prime Minister Modi will discuss the entire gamut of bilateral issues that are up for discussion. But that said, from the multilateral perspective, Mohammed, the Commonwealth, many people are arguing about the relevance of the Commonwealth in the 21st century post-colonialism. But that said, as Britain gears up for the post-Brexit scenario, there is a shift taking place within the organization itself, where the balance of power is shifting to the developing economies, namely India and other countries in Africa and Asia. So there are talks about, one, as to anoint or to nominate the next leader of the Commonwealth after Queen Elizabeth. And the second is to move the Secretariat from London to possibly other destinations, including India by that token, Mohammed. So clearly, a lot of issues up for discussion in the Commonwealth when the heads of government meet in London over the next couple of days to chart the roadmap, as it were, for the next year and decade for the CHOGM
Absolutely,
summit.
indeed. You know, let me take that thought to Mandy Clark. You know, Mandy, this of course is something which a lot of people are looking at. Some had said that, look, Commonwealth is perhaps slowly losing its relevance, but post-Brexit scenario for Britain, Commonwealth becomes extremely important.
I'm afraid I simply am struggling to hear you with the exuberance of the crowd behind me.
Right, it's extremely noisy where you are. We can hear the slogans which the supporters of the Indian Prime Minister there are raising in the background. Meanwhile, what we've got are the visuals of Indian Prime Minister sitting with his counterpart, British counterpart, at 10 Downing Street. Let me try one more time. Mandy, my question to you was this. You know, post the Brexit scenario, has Commonwealth again become extremely important for Britain, where it's not just the fact that they would like to have closer ties, but these are ties that have now become absolutely essential for Britain for forging more trade and other cooperations with these nations?
It's no doubt incredibly important for Britain in the post-Brexit scenario. They need deepening ties. They'll be looking for favourable trade deals, and it certainly puts India in a very favourable position. They can put out requests like concerns about visas. They want more continued talks. So certainly it's a factor that Britain will want much deeper trade ties with India in that post-Brexit scenario.
All right, and also, Mandy, if I could request you, to turn the camera on the crowd that's actually behind you and show us and give us a sense of this enthusiasm, this sense of, absolute sort of rapture which the people are in fact feeling as they welcome the Indian Prime Minister in London as this is his second visit.
Well, so it's interesting. This is a whole other group. Earlier we had women singing and dancing. Now there's another group that's come. So it just shows the breadth and depth of his appeal for large groups of different diaspora.
Absolutely. This is another group which has turned up. The earlier one was, like you pointed out, women who were dancing, who were there to welcome Prime Minister Modi. And even as we stay on these visuals, if I could just go across to Ramesh Ramachandran. Ramesh, you've tracked Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visits abroad. Now, how do you rate this kind of enthusiasm? Has any other Indian Prime Minister received this sort of a rapturous welcome which Prime Minister Narendra Modi seems to receive every time that he travels abroad?
Mohammed, these visuals that we're seeing on our screens right now coming to us from the UK, if anybody who's been following Prime Minister Modi's travels abroad would know that this is standard, it's become a trend, so to speak. Everywhere Prime Minister Modi travelled, there's a huge Indian diaspora waiting to receive him and build bonds between the local community and Indian government in particular under Prime Minister Modi. But anybody who has tracked Prime Minister Modi's last visit to the UK will remember the grand reception at the Wembley Stadium along with former Prime Minister David Cameron. Now, tonight's event or today's event will not be on the same scale as the Wembley event, but one can expect him to focus on issues of immediate concern to the Indian diaspora and Indian nationals living in India alike when he has a phone-in conversation, a live communication, a two-way communication with the people in the UK and elsewhere around the world. So that will be one marquee event of Prime Minister Modi's engagements in London today.
Absolutely, indeed. And we also saw him engage with members of the Indian diaspora yesterday at the Stockholm University in Sweden, where he said that members of the Indian diaspora are essentially ambassadors of India living abroad. He asked the NRIs, the non-resident Indians, to in fact to return to India, to come trade, invest and also be a part of Vision 2022, the new India vision that he's in fact spoken so much about. Do you expect that he would address the Indian diaspora in Britain today on something on the same lines?
Indeed, Mohammed, one can expect Prime Minister Modi to dwell upon issues of immediate concern for Indians living in the UK and elsewhere in Europe. Remember, a recurring theme of Prime Minister Modi's speeches to the Indian diaspora ever since he came to power in 2014 has been on leveraging their skills, their expertise, their wealth, their prosperity for the benefit of Indians living in India back home and to build that bond that India connects, so to speak, between their immediate communities, local communities and their fans and friends, families, relatives back home in India in terms of investments, foreign direct investment, in terms of expertise in technology and information technology, in terms of communication. So a lot of avenues open for collaboration between the Indian diaspora and Indian government, especially under Prime Minister Modi's flagship enterprise called Make in India. And he's been hard selling Make in India everywhere he's traveled in the last 4 years, be it the US, be it South America, be it Europe, be it Germany, be it UK. So Make in India is one flagship enterprise which he has hard sold everywhere he's traveled to in the last 4 years, and one can expect him to focus on that in his dealings and in engagements in London as well, especially with the captains of business chambers in London when he meets them later today.
And also, Ramesh, if I could just persist with you just a little bit more. You've tracked the manner in which diplomacy is conducted, but the manner in which Narendra Modi in fact travels every time that he's abroad, he seems to pay special attention to the Indian diaspora. Is he the first Prime Minister, perhaps from India, who has stressed so much upon the relationship of the Indian diaspora back home?
Indeed, without doubt, Mohammed, Prime Minister Modi lays a great emphasis, accent, significance on reaching out to the Indian diaspora everywhere he's travelled to in the last 4 odd years. And we will see that happen in London as well later today when he interacts with the local Indian diaspora living in the UK, be it in London or elsewhere in the country, to talk about their concerns, their demands as far as better access to Indian infrastructure, Indian economy, Indian investments are concerned, and also in terms of giving back to the community from where they came from, be it any part of India for that matter. So clearly, trade, investments, people-to-people ties, education, infrastructure development, Make in India program, Digital India, Skill India. These are all issues close to Prime Minister Modi's heart, and one can expect him to focus on some or all of these issues in the next couple of hours.
Absolutely, indeed. And let's also get...
Also, Excellency, I'm indeed very happy that today happens to be the birth anniversary of Lord Bashveshwara. Last time when I visited the United Kingdom, at that time I had inaugurated his bust and dedicated it to the people. And today, in fact, I will also be visiting his bust once again to pay my respects. Centuries ago, Lord Bashveshwara worked tirelessly for the empowerment of women, for bringing out unity in society, to promote democratic values and also find solutions to problems through debate. And this happened at a time even before the Magna Carta. and I'm really happy. India, as the largest democracy, today I'm here in London on his birthday, and we're going to have discussions with the UK and also attend the Trojan Summit.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, so that was the all-crucial handshake between the Indian Prime Minister and his British counterpart Theresa May there, strengthening and forging the bonds of friendship between the two nations. Remember, historically, post-independence, after India got its independence from Britain, India and Britain have always shared good, positive ties, something that has been beneficial for both nations. And now, with the new realities of the world in the post-Brexit scenario, and also in the manner in which China is, of course, seen as a big giant rising in the East, this relationship is, of course, going to be a relationship of the future. And Ramesh, if I could come to you on this, this is, of course, a visit that's high on symbolism. We've spoken about the optics of what it is like for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and also British Prime Minister Theresa May there. They're effectively sending out a clear message that, look, yes, in the post-Brexit scenario, India and Britain will, of course, be coming together in a way that we've not seen India and Britain be in the past 70 years.
Indeed, in a sense, Mohammed, both India and the UK are playing for the day after when Brexit becomes a reality. As I mentioned before, Mohammed, that Britain would like to leverage its relationship with India going forward. India is one of the biggest developing economies and emerging markets for British products and expertise and technology, and they would like to leverage that going forward, especially after the UK pulls out of EU in the next few years. So clearly they are playing for the bigger stakes here involved, especially in post-Brexit scenario, and trade, investments, intellectual property rights and so on will be focus of the delegation level talks between the two principals later today in London. But that said, the primary focus or the objective of the visit, Mohammed, would be on keeping the relations, bilateral ties on an even keel in terms of trade, investments, Make in India program, especially on Prime Minister Modi's focus or concern on de-radicalization, on security, counter-terrorism. These are all issues close to Prime Minister Modi's heart and which are of immediate concern to the UK as well.
Absolutely, indeed. I think you've summed it up really well for us. Thank you very much indeed, Ramesh Ramachandran, for joining us, and also to Mandy Clark, who joined us from London, getting us those visuals of the rapturous welcome which the Indian Prime Minister got at London as he made his way to 10 Downing Street. Now, this, of course, is a relationship which will in many ways look at the high stakes that are involved for both India and for Britain, and will, of course, keep tracking the developments for you as they unfold in Britain as Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on this historic trip at the United Kingdom.